All right, magic makers. I'm continuing on this Friday, these Friday podcasts. And today, out of the 6 pillars of health, today I'm talking about self-care. And I've done several podcasts about self-care. I'll link them up in the show notes if you want to go a little bit deeper. And I've shared that I feel like self-care gets a lot of, like, I'm going to say, token talk, right? We say we need to do, air quotes, self-care. However, many people think it's about manicures and pedicures, and self-care is not exactly about that. And then the other flip of the coin is that I hear people like, I'm got a lot on my plate. I just don't have time for self-care between kids and work and just life. I don't have time for self-care. And one of the big things I like to get across to everyone is that self-care looks different for me than it looks for you, than it looks for Sharon, than it looks for Jamie, right? It looks very different. And it was just, we have to start to kind of say, like, how do the best way I can describe it is, I have an upcoming podcast talking about joy. And she talks about, how do you nourish, right? How do we nourish ourselves? How do we start to, like, when I hear the word nourish, like, that's such a good word. And when I think about nourish, like, have you ever had like really dry skin? And then you put lotion on your hands and it just, like, your skin is just like, oh, thank you. That's how I look at self-care. And so whatever you do that makes your whole body say, oh, thank you, that's self-care. So for those of you who are like, girlfriend, I am busy. I am beyond busy. I'm going to help you talk about how do you make time for self-care even when you're busy, right? Because who isn't busy these days? Like, the busier that we are, we kind of have to feel, the busier we are, the more we have to pull over to the side of the road and just take a big, deep freaking breath. Back in the day, you saw the Calgon commercials where the woman was so busy and she dreamed of this relaxing bath. Like, that's what I want you to be like. I want you to have a Calgon moment, and it doesn't have to be a bath unless that brings you joy, right? So it's really important for us to find a way to make time for yourself. And 10 minutes, 15 minutes, it doesn't have to be these like hour-long spa days, right? Because self-care is just as important for your physical health as well as it is for your mental health. And these days, mental health is huge. We've coming out of a 2-year pandemic where, like, it's just been a lot about stress and anxiety about, we don't even know what's going to happen. There's just so much in our lives that we just start to need to make time for self-care, even if we're really busy. So the first place I'm going to say is get up earlier, right? People hear about this morning routine. And when I say morning routine, it doesn't have to be this like 12-step thing for a morning routine. When we get out of bed, even if it's for 15 minutes, right? It gives us extra time to just have a day. And I was that girl for decades. I would get up and out and I was off to the gym, meeting my first client. And my only self-care was like sprinting to the bus stop to make sure I caught the 5:45 #1 bus so that I could make it to the Prudential Center by 6:05 so that I could get in line at Dunkin' Donuts to get a cup of coffee so that I could meet my 6:30 client, right? That was my grind. And, now I've shifted my schedule so that I can get out of bed and just have 15 minutes for me. And, sure, getting a few extra hours of sleep, it sounds too good to pass up, but waking up early gives you permission to brew a cup of coffee, read uninterrupted, journal, make a healthy breakfast, do maybe like a 15-minute foam rolling yoga routine, or do anything that makes you happy. But of course, right, someone was like, Kim, I'm giving up my sleep. Well, that means I'm going to shift and have my bedtime start 15 minutes early so I can get up 15 minutes ahead of time. And, I'm dating this recording, but I'm recording it in the summertime. So, the sun is out, the sun is open. So for a lot of people, it's easier to start to do these early morning routines in the summertime. So it gives us a few months of daylight to really get it going. And you decide, even sitting in silence and just being like, oh, I have 15 minutes for myself before, maybe you're running around getting kids ready to go here, there, and everywhere. Just getting your whole family up and out the door. But here's 15 minutes for you to have permission to just have like a quiet cup of coffee and just reflect. Give you opportunity, I journal, but maybe you're not a journaler, but just 15 minutes of peace, right? So think about it. The next one is make a schedule and stick to it, right? So many people are the first person You won't skip, if you're meeting someone for whatever, you wouldn't skip meeting your friend. But it's very easy for us to be like, I'm just going to roll over. I know I said I was going to get up this morning, but no, it's not going to happen. And I'm a calendar junkie. And so everything goes into my calendar so that it's already like a fait accompli, if you will, if it's in my calendar. And so every Sunday I sit down and I map out my week, right? So this week's a little hectic. I'm coming off of a holiday and I'm traveling tomorrow. So it's like a lot of my week is crunched into literally 24 hours. So it's like, I looked at my week, I'm like, okay, what can I do? And I have to be okay with it. Right. I have to be okay with like, all right, Wednesday's a travel day. Usually it's my workout day. So that means I'm not going to work out on Wednesday, but I'm going to work out on Tuesday because I'm not working on Wednesday. So it's like, even though I make a schedule, I'm giving myself fluidity in it. Right. So it's like, I put in my calendar every single week. If this is a normal week, every single week, I block out the days that I'm going to work out with myself. I have a standing date with myself every evening that I'm going to read 10 pages of a book of my choice. And then I'm going to do some form of breath work before I go to bed. And at least 4 to 5 days a week, I am working out. And it's like, boom, it's in my calendar and I'm not breaking it. Because one of the biggest reasons why people say they don't have time is that they don't bother budgeting their time, right? They're just like, oh yeah, on Tuesday, and like loosely I'll be like, I'm gonna do A, B, C, or D, and then you don't do shit, right? Because you're like, oh shit, this took me longer than I thought. This blah blah blah. Where it's like, I sit down and I map it out. Like that's why I started working out in the morning, because I know me, like once I sit down, like sometimes I just like go heads down into something, and it's hard for me to pull myself back up. So that's why you fail. So it doesn't have to be this like 8:05, 8:30. No. It could just be like, okay, typically my workouts are anywhere from 7 to 8 in the morning. I'm working out. I start my day at 9. So it gives me like an hour of buffer that, sometimes I'm a little slow when I work out, and that's okay. It also gives me a little buffer that like, maybe I want a little extra time journaling, or maybe I just want a little extra time just like sitting there, just drinking a cup of coffee and taking in the view, whatever it is. So give yourself that grace, because one of the, but also it has to be a priority, right? You have to decide that I do want to take some time for myself, and do that. And it's totally up to you where you schedule it. It could be at the end of the day for you. It could be, you get the kids to bed and this is when you have your quality time. But again, one of the biggest things I see a lot of my clients who do it at night, they feel like they earned it. Like I had one hell of a day, or I got the kids to bed on time and I earned it. And so they end up staying up late watching TV, or just stay up late just doing whatever it is that they like to do, where they don't set a bedtime. And then that's when it becomes a challenge, because if I don't have a bedtime, some of you pass out in front of the TV, or you pass out doing whatever it is that you're doing, where if I want to make sure that there is a little bit of structure, a little bit of discipline, so that it's not like, you're passing out in front of the TV, or you're passing out doing whatever it is that you're doing. We're organized with our time. The other thing, ditch distractions. It's really easy to, and as I just alluded to, like Netflix and chill, or scrolling through social media, that can be relaxing for short periods of time, but for long periods of time, we just need to shift our focus to what nurtures our mind versus what numbs our mind. So give yourself a goal before you turn on the TV, right? Are you going to binge watch the entire season of whatever that you're binge watching? Or are you going to say, what, tonight I'm only going to watch episodes 1 and 2 and be done. And then, kind of like a slow drip the series. And it's funny because I just think about, in the last, 5 years, it becomes really easy to just go on a bender, right? And so maybe save the benders for the weekends when you have a little bit more time, that you're not starting your bender, your binge at like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. Like, give yourself, specific parameters of how long you're going to watch TV, and give yourself a goal of physically turning off the TV. Falling asleep in front of the TV isn't clear, especially if you're someone who struggles with sleep. And a couple episodes ago, I talked about sleep, and sleep is one of the biggest things that a lot of my clients tell me that they have trouble with. So we have to start to kind of, put our brains into like the sleep funnel, and I talk about it all the time, like with our children, we we have this elaborate bedtime, ritual with our children where we're like, there's tubby time, and then there's the stuffed animals, and then there's all these like steps we take with bedtime. But for as adults, we have no problem like passing out on the couch or our chairs or wherever you pass out before you go to bed. And so I'm asking you to at least like set a bedtime so that there is some type of clear delineation between this is active time and this is passive time, so that our brains have an opportunity to like stop being like stimulated. Even though you might be watching like a nature series or whatever, our brain is still like keyed in when we're doing that. So you could pledge that you're going to do 10 minutes of meditation before your favorite show starts, or you're going to do wall planks or wall sits during the commercials, like whatever it's going to do. But it's us trying to like find ways to just not numb out scrolling or watching TV, and focus on the little things. I used to be an all or nothing kind of girl, right? If I wasn't like crushing it, getting an A++ and hoping for extra credit, I was like, why do it? And if you can't get it, and if I couldn't get it all in, it didn't count, right? And I would spend my day festering, like, oh my God, I suck. I can't believe. And I have clients who feel this way too. And we're working through how to like start to like turn that dial. And it could make us, and those kind of thoughts, it can make it very difficult for us to get in full-blown workout sessions, because we keep telling ourselves it has to look this way. If it doesn't look this way, I have a client who's like, if I don't work out my body part splits, I'm not going to get results. And I was like, how do you know? Right? That's always my question. When someone tells me definitively, I go through, some of you might know I'm a big fan of Byron Katie, and she has these 4 questions that I think are just absolutely absolutely powerful, and it's a big part of your self-care, and it's called the work. And so when someone tells me like with absolute certainty that something's not going to work, I'm like, is it true? Like, how do you know? Like, give me some evidence that it's not going to work. By making a change, it's not going to work. So it's like the question is, so she's like, I got to do body part splits in order for me to achieve my goals. Okay. Is it true? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. Can you absolutely know it's true? Can you absolutely know that I have to work out 2 hours a day and it has to be body part splits? You don't, right? You don't know until you try something different. And then you could go back and say, you know what? I tried it and it didn't work. Right. And so how do we react when we believe this thought? And so for so many of us, including myself, I got caught into that. I must do body part splits. It must be 2 hours. And how do I react when I believe that thought? And I put so much pressure on me to always make sure I hit the gym. I put so much pressure on me to prioritize the gym over everything else in my life. All right. And so who would I be without this thought? And my identity was so wrapped up in the gym. My identity was so wrapped up in my fitness that I was like losing sight of everything else. Like I couldn't see the forest for the trees. Like the tree was the workout. And through starting with some self-care, starting with and going through the questions, that was really how I was able to kind of break through my freaking crazy ass mindset of I had to do it all, right? I started to break down and ask myself the questions like, if I didn't do a 2-hour workout, is it true, right? I had to start to analyze and assess every little thing that I was doing. And I just did a podcast on this previous Wednesday. It's like, what to do when your diet's not working, right? Because it's like, typically when our diet doesn't work, we double down. And so I had to start saying, you know what? Everything counts. It's not the big things that count. It's the little things that count. And, it's step by, inch by inch, right? A snowstorm doesn't happen in 5 minutes. A snowstorm is an hours long, sometimes days long thing. So I look at it like this, like, if you're someone who's like, okay, Kim, you're kind of starting to make sense. And if you're struggling with like, it needs to be this big thing, it needs to be huge, right? So it's like, make time of self-care just by setting aside like little small things. So like be okay with a 15-minute walk, right? My typical walk is an hour loop, but sometimes I don't have an hour, but I really need to walk. So sometimes it's a matter of maybe I just circle the block 3 times and in 30 minutes I get that done versus the full loop. Maybe it's setting a time. It's that, reading a chapter, a book on your living room couch with nobody home. Instead of exercising for an hour, maybe it's saying, you know what, I'm going to get this done in 10 to 15 minutes. Before I used to, my husband and I like to go to the beach, and before we would go to the beach, and we would typically leave around 9. So I would literally be Googling what gym opened the earliest on a Sunday so that I could earn myself going to the beach. Right. So this is like some of the crazy that I went through my head. So as I talk about these things, I've experienced them. I felt them. So I know how real it feels. I know how like crushing it is. And even though it's crushing you, you're like, I don't know how to climb out. You climb out by taking small steps. You climb out by creating small experiments. That's how you climb out. And those are some of the things we are going to be discussing in my upcoming webinar on Sunday. It is a stress-free summer webinar, and it is all about how do we give ourselves grace over the summer? How do we not be like stressing over every little morsel? How do we not be that person who's bringing your own Tupperware to the barbecue or having to make sure you had a protein shake before you head out there, right? It's how do we have a stress-free summer where we can be normal? We can be that person who is, sitting there and having a burger or having an ice cream cone with sprinkles with our kid on a vacation, not being okay with having a lobster roll without telling the kitchen, this is how you have to prepare it, right? This is what it's all about. So if that's something that you want to experience and learn more about, do me a favor. In the show notes, you will find the link to get yourself an invite to that special masterclass. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I got for you today. If this is landing with you and you have any questions, do me a favor, reach out to me on social media, Kim Jefferson Coach. Also share this with a friend, someone else who needs to hear the same shoulder shaking that I got and that you're getting right now. All right, ladies, love ya, and I will talk to you next